G'day, Scott. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm very good, thanks, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolute pleasure to have you on. I know we met a little while ago, and that wasn't the first time, though, that I'd heard your name or seen some of your work. But why don't you tell people that don't know who Scott Stramyk is, who Scott Stramyk is?
Yeah, sure. I am a travel and lifestyle photographer, primarily focused on landscapes earlier on in my career as a hobby, but now mainly focused on travel and lifestyle. I run a whole bunch of photographic workshops, photo tours,
Hmm.
and that's where my career's kind of positioned me to be nowadays. So
Yeah,
a lot of people know me through my time at Canon as a Canon collective ambassador, where I was running a lot of photographic workshops, photo tours through Canon. And then I've transitioned out to my own business, doing that full time, and then yeah, continuing my photographic career.
awesome, awesome. So, how do you stay motivated? You've had quite a long and varied career. What is it that sort of keeps you going and makes photography the thing that you want to do?
It's a great question. And a lot of the time, I find that as any hobby you get interested in initially, it's that honeymoon phase when you first get into it, it's all guns blazing. It's you want to get out, you want to shoot, you want to do this, you're like nagging friends to go out and join you. And that kind of lingered and lasted such a long time for me that
Mm.
I jumped straight into a career as soon as I left school in photography, which
Yep.
wasn't my path, but through different networking situations and through TAFE, I was able to get into earning money pretty quickly in photography. And then I was trying to earn as much money to be able to travel and continue getting to different locations to take photos. So that passion stemmed from pretty early on as I left school
Hmm.
to carry me through. So my bucket list of new locations to travel to and new locations to see grew bigger and bigger the more I invested my time and my money into photography.
Yeah,
And
right.
then the more I spoke to other photographers and networked and just hung out with photographers,
Mm.
that list just kept growing exponentially. So I find that every time I have conversations like this, I run off some ideas, I hear where other people have traveled to, I see where they've gone to, and I get inspired for those conversations
Yeah,
just
nice.
from the content that those people are creating or the artwork or the print that they put out. So going to exhibitions, networking and just catching up with people,
Hmm.
that's generally the most organic influence that I get, where I'm inspired by talking to people that like you
Nice.
can talk to me for hours on travel and visiting new locations and going to this place and that place and kind of hearing other people's stories, and that storytelling aspect of photography is really compelling to me, and I'm always trying to convey that through my work and just having those conversations with people just to expand on my knowledge of the planet that we live on, but also just to find out more about culture and the way people live in different places.
Yeah, nice, nice. And I guess you mentioned the conversations that you're having as being a major influence. Are there any particular people that have influenced you more than others?
It's always left field. Like you'll be having conversation with someone for the first time and you just general chit chat just to get the conversation going. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden you find a little bit more about them and you dig a little deeper, and then you find out that you've both been to this one location and then they've diverted and gone somewhere completely different. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an influential photographer that I've had a chat with. It could be just a neighbor or someone down the street that's just decided to ask what camera you're shooting with at a sunrise. I find that like having the camera and being in a location, that's it's basically a passport that takes you wherever you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
People will just be drawn to you and go, oh, what camera are you shooting on? Oh, I've got that tripod. Or
Yeah,
oh, is that a wide angle lens or a telephoto lens you're shooting with? And that opens up the conversation pretty organically and naturally. Like I remember a couple of years ago, I was just minding my own business, shooting a sunrise, and I had this gentleman come up over to me and start chatting to me. And he had his mobile phone, was taking a few shots,
sure.
and was just intrigued about what I was doing. I had two camera setups. I was doing a YouTube video and filming myself and doing behind the scenes.
Hmm.
And I was so fixated on what I had to do that I had a really brief conversation with him and was just trying to focus on what I was doing. And I was like, we'll chat a bit later.
Yeah, yeah,
And our conversation ended and he moved on. And I was like, great, now I can finish doing what I was doing.
sure.
And then as I packed up and I moved to another spot, that same guy was there. So I just had a bit of a chat to him then because I had
Nice.
done what I needed to do
Yeah.
and started talking to him. And he was a filmmaker and a producer
Oh,
and
wow.
chatting. And he had just finished a big movie over in Spain. And he was just really elated to have a conversation and just connect. So he ended up inviting me to his
Yeah,
like very first showing of the video that was unedited, and they were just trying to get some feedback. So it's like having those conversations you would never do
yeah, yeah.
because you'd probably be asleep. Instead, it's 5 to 6 in the morning and you're out freezing cold, middle of winter, and this guy is just wanting to have a chat, and that's what connected us. And it's those experiences that just give you the time to open up and learn something more about someone
Yeah.
else's walk of life, or just find that commonality between one person that's completely different to where you are, and you've got photography that kind of joins you together. And
Yeah.
over the years of running education, running workshops, I found that you've got people from every walk of life, and it's that photography is that one thing that's connecting you, and it's storytelling and it's looking for unique photographic opportunities, and everyone has a different vision on the photo that they're about to take, and no one will take the exact same photo because everyone has a different way of life and the way their outlook is on life as well. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
really excites me, to have conversations like this and just randomly meet people, or people watch when you're out and doing some street photography. I just like to sit back and observe what's happening and observe how people are flowing around the space that I'm in, and just see what they're getting up to and what kind of entices them to get out there and look around.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. I think you touched on a really interesting point there around the commonality of photography. Everyone is a photographer now, basically. Everyone's got a camera in their pocket, in their phone now. And where do you see photography moving in society? I normally ask this question a bit later, but for me, it's come up and really come to the fore now because of what you were just saying about how those conversations occur, and that, as you say, you just have random people that come from all walks of life having that commonality of photography.
I find it really interesting that that conversation, that question comes up in conversation very frequently, and
Mm.
people are like, "Oh, photography is dead. It's not gonna last long," or like, "These cameras aren't selling much anymore because the hobby's not there. It's not around as affluently as before." But like 7 or 8 years ago, the compact range of cameras were really big. And about 4 or 5 years ago, they were almost non-existent. Mobile
Yeah,
phones had come in and everyone were buying new phones. Like, the camera's great on this. But as of like end of last year and this year, it's flipped on its head again. People are out hunting for a 7, 8 year old camera that
yeah,
they can fit in their pocket, that they can take to the concert or take to a family event, that can create something really great that's not their mobile phone, that is
yeah,
bigger and bulkier, but they still want that portability. And
yeah,
I found that those kind of fashion trends that kind of ebb and flow never die off completely. Like, they've come full circle. And
yeah,
say film photography now, that is such a big hit at the moment. And
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
it's interesting that social media through TikTok and Instagram have brought that back to the forefront.
Mm.
Because everyone thought iPhone or smartphone photography was going to be the big focus now, and being Instagram, that's all it was about, taking instant images and posting it and getting the latest result. Now people are starting to realize, even if they're not photographers, but they've got a mobile phone, they've gone through over the last few years and gone, okay, I can get this with my mobile phone, but I want to take it a little bit further.
Yeah, I
I'm
want
not
to go to
a
that next
photographer,
level.
but I want to create a bit more of my own style. I want to add
Mm.
my own flavor to this image. So they're starting to look at different alternatives, and these other cameras, or it might be a film camera that's going to give them a more nostalgic look. And
Yeah.
that's the flavor of this week or this year that
Mm.
everyone's diving into. And it's interesting how that's come full circle. If
Yeah,
you spoke
absolutely.
to someone 10 years ago, they would have said film's dead, sell your gear for next to nothing, because that's where it is, and film
Yeah.
is no longer important. But now it's an art form,
Yeah.
and now, like, the more and more you see people out there, there's more film being shot, and companies are producing more film cameras.
Mm.
So it's just
Well, I liken it to the re-emergence or resurgence of vinyl in
yeah,
music.
100%.
There is something more visceral, I think, or more tangible about handling film and handling vinyl records than there is in pushing a button on an MP3 player or just pushing a button on a digital and playing around.
Well,
You've got to get that film developed, and that can be a challenge nowadays, finding somewhere that'll do it cheap enough.
yeah,
But that once you've actually got it in your hands, you actually have a physical analog piece of a record of what it was that you shot.
yeah. As you said, it's tangible.
That tangibility has value in it in and of itself, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And you see that time and time again. The more that people will start to shoot digitally, they go, okay, where are those photos? And as
Mm,
they progress through their life and as they become parents, like I have, I'm realizing that photo books are more important. Photos of the kids are more important.
absolutely. Yeah.
Actually, I've been shooting a lot more film because I'm actually getting them printed, because I will send the film to get developed and I'll get the print straight away. And I've
Yeah.
got that there. And I'm choosing my film stock to portray the mood or the emotion or the feeling that I want to try and get out of it. So I'm allowing the professionals that have created the film back in the day, Kodak and Fuji and all the other brands, to
Yeah.
give me that look that they've created, because I know that works. And you could say in this digital age, it's like buying a preset. You're baking in that style. It's very
Kind of.
different, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what people are trying to create out of a preset in digital format, is trying to
Yeah.
create
Yeah.
a look and a mood and a feel. But there's something very different with an analog image versus a
Yeah.
digital image. Same with vinyl versus an MP3. You just can't compare them.
Yeah,
There's
and an
moving back.
emulation of it is not quite the same.
No,
And
yeah, and you
I
can
was actually going
simulate
to.
it.
Sorry.
I was going to say you can simulate it as best as you want, but
Yeah.
nothing will beat that true original
Yeah.
form.
I was going to say there's for quite some years around there's been filters like Ektachrome and Kodachrome and Fuji and Agfa and all those sorts of things. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, even I saw one the other day which was Agfa 1930s or something, or 1920s Agfa, and it was trying to replicate the grain and the color of those early color films that Agfa was pioneering in back in the 20s and 30s. But yeah, I think I don't think they're as it comes back to that tangibility. I don't think they're the same, and I don't think, as you say, you can simulate as well as you can if you're actually using the media itself.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And to your point about vinyl, it's just the cracks and the noises and
Yeah,
just everything that is
the
the
little warps in the
exactly. That's what makes it, and that's what adds the character. And as photographers, that's what we're always trying to achieve. We're trying to add our flavor and our style to these images to separate us from everyone else.
Absolutely.
You're not going to
That
have
said, I'm never going back to film, I don't think. I still have my Minolta XG1 that
yeah.
I bought back in the, I think it was in the 80s, somewhere around there. But I, I look at it and go, yeah, I could stick some film in that and I could do, yeah. And then I go, yeah, nah.
For
And it's,
me, because I was always surrounded by top photographic equipment because I worked at Canon, I had
yeah,
access to quite a lot of equipment for all the workshops we were doing.
yeah, yeah.
And because I'm very technically minded and I run a lot of workshops on all of those aspects, I
Right.
found that kind of reining it all back and just putting back a single lens and a film camera, that just gave me the very narrow focus on exactly what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah, right.
So I got to a point where okay, I've invested a lot in equipment and I have 5 or 6 different lenses that I would normally take with me on most
Yeah.
shoots. And I'd get to the point where I was like, okay, I know the shots that I want, but do I need to carry all this? And I would carry it all, my back and neck would start getting sore as I'd be hiking with it and it'd be close to
Yep.
15 to 20 kilos. And it was just a sense of relief, just going, okay, I'm just going to focus on one lens, one camera, and I don't have to worry about anything. I'm just going to see what I can capture and create with this. And it was a big relief to just go, okay, I'm on a holiday with a
Yeah.
single lens rather than having to hike and carry all this extra stuff. And you can do that with digital, but the film camera just gave me that extra level of denoise. I would just
Sure.
switch everything else off and turn the digital noise out in terms of not having my phone and not having
Well, you
music
can't look at the
playing.
back of the camera in the first place, you know,
Yeah,
so taking a
was just
shot.
it was that connection with me to go back into nature, which is
Yeah.
kind of interested me in photography initially. Is okay, the whole point for me to get into photography was I had so much on my plate at the time. I was working, I was doing all these things, and I just needed to separate myself from my routine. And I
Yep.
wanted to get out to nature and just have that sense of zen and that distraction from everything else. And I find that I'm going full circle back to that point where it's okay, I'm now doing photography for my job, my business,
Yep.
but I need to have more time for myself and I need to get rid of all the distraction of running the business that's running in the back of my head and the
Yeah.
family time, everything else that's going on. I need some time for myself. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to switch the noise off. I'm going to go with a single camera and a lens and go out to nature and just be one and just absorb it and look for those creative shots. And just I think the best thing about shooting film is that I'm not just spraying and praying and taking 200 or 1,000 photos.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got 36 images or 24 that I'm just going in and honing in on. Oh, actually, that looked like it was a good image, but now that I put the camera to my eye, it's actually not what I'm after.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I won't take that shot. I'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's therapeutic in a way because you start to train your eye a little bit more to see exactly what you want to see. And before you pull the camera out, you know that's worth a shot and it's not worth a shot. So you don't even have to pull the camera up to your eye. So it's just starting to use my vision in photography to look for the light and look for the image before I even go to capture it.
Awesome. You mentioned the Canon ambassadorship. How did that come about? And what did you approach them? Did they approach you? Where did that sort of come from?
Yeah, so I was doing a bit of traveling in 2012
Hmm.
and I had applied for a job at Canon that didn't quite go ahead because of the extra travel I had locked in.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
I spent the rest of 2012 traveling around and all through Europe and America. And then I came back and there was an opportunity that arose once I came back the next year. I was like, okay, I'll just put it back in and see if they're interested. and a role came up, and I jumped on it to work at Canon, and ended up moving into a role in CPS, which is the Canon Professional Services.
Mm-hmm.
So in that role, that I was basically managing all of the pro photographers that had an equipment that were a member of the Canon Professional Services. So being a member of Canon Professional Services gave them access to repair replacements and loans, and we would support a lot of the high-end professional events, the international events like the MotoGP, the Formula One, the Australian Open.
Yep.
So every year I'd be going to those events and having the opportunity to talk to the professionals and shoot with them, and also give them advice on why the cameras weren't working or repairing their gear. So I managed that for a handful of years. And then about 3 years, 2 or 3 years later, the business approached me and said, "Hey, would you be interested? We've got this group called the Canon Collective where we run photo tours and photo workshops. Would you be interested in joining the team?" So that's where I transitioned from the pro space into photographic workshops and tours.
Oh.
Initially, it was just photo workshops and teaching people the basics of photography, but that quickly expanded as the years went on, and then was hosting international tours to Japan and doing big photo festival all around Australia, and led me to do over 1,000 workshops in my time there, and it's continued on to doing it for myself for my own business, and building out more international tours.
Do you ever look back on your career and think, oh, I could have done that differently? Is there anything that you would have changed?
There's always forks in the road where you go,
Yeah, what if I'd done that instead of this? Yeah.
But it's not the path I took. This is the way I've gone. I don't regret anything. I think opportunities have arisen, and I've just grabbed it with both hands and given it my all and moved into those different areas. So yeah, it's been great for a variety of like character growth for myself as I've moved through, and I've definitely noticed the different people that I've worked with and I've talked to over the years with all of the other professional photographers, and through AIPP and being involved in all of those areas, you get to meet some really interesting people and really prolific photographers in the industry that have pioneered the industry, especially for the Australian market. And they've kind of given tips and feedback and insight into my photography, but also just photography in general and things to look for. And that's something I really struggled with early on in my photography career, was there wasn't a great deal of openness and people wanting to talk about that. So that was something that I struggled with early on in my photographic career, that kind of set my path pretty early on to go, okay, I slogged it really hard for many years to get to where I am. And now I'm happy to share that information. I don't want to gatekeep. I want to be able to fast track people to where they are. And I've got so many people through the collective that have been students of mine that are now fully fledged photographers and doing their own thing, and just seeing their confidence in just their normal day and life, and seeing how far they've gone with that. It puts a huge smile on my face and makes me feel really, really like I've really achieved something, to see that progression in just their daily life, not even just their photography. It's great to see both of those areas of that person develop and change for the better.
Yeah, I honestly don't think there's anything more fulfilling than mentoring somebody and seeing their career go off on a trajectory that yours might have struggled at the same age or stage in the career, and seeing them just take off and fly is absolutely marvelous.
Yeah.
In terms of creative challenges, do you get much time for personal work? And how much time do you spend on that versus what you're doing for clients and doing from a professional standpoint?
It's always a challenge. it's always trying to find that time for yourself, especially when you're shooting and working for clients.
Yep.
You're constantly on that hustle to find more work and make sure that you're bringing in the bread to feed the family, so to speak. As you get out there, sometimes you just get caught up with the work and working on the business that you don't get to put your energy back into those personal projects for yourself, or even just getting out and shooting for yourself. So making sure that you align your photography endeavors and what you want to do in your career to align with what you actually love and enjoy. There's no point if you are a landscape photographer in your heart and your passion, yet you go out and you just shoot kids sports photography. If that really interests you and you're not a big fan of the netball or the junior rugby league or whatever it is, then it's not going to be sustainable for you.
Yeah.
Say, as cliche as it is, find something you love and you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
If it's in the same genre, sometimes it's not the exact same thing that you want to be doing.
Yeah. Shooting a corporate event or corporate headshots is just not the same as going out at 4 a.m. and finding a rock shelf to stand on.
That's it. Yeah. So it's just finding the balance. Like if you're not slogging your guts out 6 to 7 days a week doing all the corporate events and shooting all of those headshots, and that's it, that's going to quickly fall apart if your passion is landscape photography or travel photography.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if that is your 4 to 5 days a week and you can focus on that, and that's bringing you the income to then go, okay, now I've got 4 weeks, I'm now purely going to focus my energy on that. That's a big thing. That then you've got your goals set in place, and having goals put forward to go, okay, I'm going to work my guts out for 4 months, but I know I've got a month that I'm going to do straight after that, and I'm going to just travel and I'm going to go and see all these sites and I'm going to photograph all this, whether it be a road trip locally or you're going to go internationally. And I know so many other photographers that do that, wedding photographers that will work 9 months of the year, just hard slog, just working maybe three weddings every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and then they'll have 3 months off and they'll go spend all that time overseas, and then they'll do their own creative projects. And that's something that I've done over the years, is just built up my nest egg of what I want to do and put a bit of a kitty together and go, okay, once it gets to this amount, then I'm going to go and invest it in this trip, or I'm going to do some reconnaissance for myself and do a recce to this country. And that's where my photo tours came into play, where I'd put a little bit of funds into it to build out a recce for myself, plan it all out, go there, visit, and then go, okay, this is a perfect tour. I'm going to now run it now that I've been there and I know what is to be expected there. And I've got this great tour that I've put together, and start running that.
Awesome. You mentioned having those goals. Do you have goals in your personal work? Obviously, the goal of building up that nest egg, and that's one thing, but actually from a creative perspective, do you have creative goals in your own work?
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of projects that I always write down and work on in the background, but I haven't been able to put anything all the way through to an exhibition yet. One big project that I've been working on for quite a few years that is still in the pipeline and still work in progress, but having a focus on where I want to take it and what I want to do, it's a bit more of a long-term project. It might be a 5 or a 10-year project, I don't know yet, but as I accumulate more images that fit the brief that I've put together, then that will go towards that. But the ultimate goal is to basically have a photographic book and an exhibition based off the work that I'm putting together.
Yeah. Is there anything you do that you'd say is starting to push the boundaries for your own personal work?
I'm starting to set myself more challenges. So I've just been thinking about recently doing a 30-day challenge just to reinvigorate and open up a bit more of change for my style and
Sure.
just see where that style goes. So I'm putting that together for the month of November. Depending on how busy in life gets, I'll see how I go, but I'm hoping to nail it for this month. That's my goal for just like a kind of localized personal development for myself. I find that you're constantly having to throw yourself in the deep end to try new things and see. So it's not a very long challenge, but it's still a big challenge because you might just be stuck in the office all day, or you might be a series of talks or a series of meetings and you don't have that opportunity to get out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's where that challenge comes in to go, okay, I've got 15 minutes before I get to bed. What can I photograph that's around my house? Is there something that I can be creative with to do that? And I like to challenge myself with that from time to time just to inspire myself and just to find a little bit more creative energy through my normal day to day. Because it's
Yeah.
hard when you're running your own business, you're always still constantly looking for other ways to get more income or
Absolutely.
clients to find. So you're most of the time you're so focused on those things to go, okay, don't have time for personal projects, but
Yep.
you need to find that time. Otherwise, you'll hit burnout pretty quickly.
Well, it's kind of like what you said before. If you find a job doing what you love, you'll never work a day. But if all you're doing is working, then you're going to fall out of love with it, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe not quickly, but
Eventually,
it'll
yeah.
burn you out.
Yeah. And you just want to make sure that you're constantly doing different things to reinvigorate that.
Yeah,
For a
definitely.
lot of for a lot of beginner photographers, I always say the best thing to do is to try every genre of photography. Don't
Yeah,
just go, okay, I love car photography and that's all you shoot, because you might find that there's another aspect of photography that you really love but you never thought of before. And you go,
yeah,
okay, I'll go and do a dance photography workshop, and then I'll go and do some photography of animals, and then you go and bump into someone that does polo and you go, oh, I've got a camera, can I come to an event? And they, oh yeah, come along. And then you try something and you actually, I love this. There's the action and the adventure behind it all.
yeah.
Something I never thought of doing. And it's that interaction that you had with that one person that kind of led to something else. And then a year down the track, that's what you're doing, and you're the lead photographer in that space. And it's really interesting a lot of the time when you are trying different photographic styles or genres, there's so much that can be translated in terms of technique and style that can be translated across all genres. So
Yeah.
say for instance, you're a portrait photographer and you've used a particular setting to get a result, and then you go to another, say, sport photography like motocross, and then
Yep.
okay, well, I can't use that technique because there's not a person in front of me, but the subject, you could use that technique to create that effect,
Yeah.
or vice versa. So you've got a sports photographer that does a lot of panning and then wants to start shooting portraiture, and then you go, oh, actually I can use that panning technique in my portraiture to create a lot more mood and atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. You can have your models walking through a park or street or whatever it is, and
Yeah,
pan with them. Yeah.
yeah. And then you're adding flash into it, and then you're getting that end result where the flash is illuminating the subject, but you've got the blur
Yeah.
through it, and that's creating a lot more mood and atmosphere to the overall result. So that's when you can start to get more creative, because you're blending different techniques and aspects of your photography into each other.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you define success as in your photography?
I think we stemmed on that a little bit before,
Yeah.
is having that time for your passion projects and
Yep.
finding the time to have that balance between shooting the things that allow you to be as creative as possible. So you have enough work that comes in to pay the bills and keep you afloat, while being able to inject that money into that creative aspect, whether it be a trip overseas that's going to inspire you to learn about the culture of a new country, or it's to spend time with the family. whatever it is, I don't think it matters what you do for work. It doesn't have to be photography, but if you can find that in life where whatever you're doing has that balance where you're enjoying your life while you're working, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm always just trying to work out what that balance is. And that's the most important thing, especially as I've gotten a bit older in age, as I've moved through the different chapters of my life, I've gone, oh, okay, it doesn't really matter about having this fancy car or this fancy outfit or whatever it is. You don't have to be showy for people. It's more about what are the core values of your life.
Yeah, it's more about who you are than what you've got.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just wondered if you ever collaborated with other artists, such as painters or musicians or whatever, to create any interdisciplinary projects at all.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had a few artists reach out to me for some of my work, and I've actually collaborated with a girl named Jamie Paul, who is an incredible artist, and she's actually used a couple of my images to create her own pencil drawings of some of the animals I photographed. One of them was a portrait of a gorilla that I captured, and she's hand stencil drawn this thing, and it looks almost lifelike in comparison. And she's given me a copy of it. I've got it. I haven't framed it yet, but I've got to get that framed very soon. She sent that across to me, and just those kind of collaborations just make your heart sing when you see someone actually go, oh, I love that image. I would really love to draw that myself. And then she's doing updates and sending me photos of her going through it, and just the intricacy and the detail for her to love the image that much that she spent 100, 200 hours of work just drawing this out. And she does some incredible work out there. And that collaboration was really cool, just to be able to see my work being recreated and made in her own vision. Just mind-blowing. So yeah, I've also had a small artist who does very small little stencils, and grabbed a couple of my landscape photos and just done little watercolor stencils out of that. And yeah, it's really inspiring and encouraging to see other people drawn to your work and see that and go, okay, like maybe I can recreate this in my own style. And so things like that just really blow you out of the water when you get that message to come across.
I love it when a painter or a stencil artist or something comes along and says, hey, can I use this as a basis for something that I'm doing? 99% of the time I'm going to say absolutely yes. It depends a lot on how they ask.
Yeah, exactly right.
But if they've asked nicely, then absolutely, I'm all for it. And I really love seeing the end result when that happens too.
Yeah, I even love just the progress too, just seeing seeing the vision of going, okay, like I know how I create my art, and sometimes you'll spend hours planning out that shot, and then you go out and you shoot it and you go, okay, now I've got to take it into the editing suite, and you edit it and tweak it, and it might be the second or third iteration where you actually get it to where you want, and you go, okay, that's my medium, and that took me this amount of time, but someone else's art medium could just take them 3 or 4 months to put together. And it's just,
that's right.
What's your process? Like what's your thought process in doing that? And where do you get your inspiration from? So I find it's very important to blend your element of where you get your inspiration from other mediums as well. So going into an art exhibition and seeing paintings, and go to the Louvre and look at different artworks from centuries ago and go, okay, I see they're using light in this tremendously, and I need to up my game. Like if that's what they're doing back then, and they're doing it with oil paintings and different mediums, and all I'm doing is capturing the moment, then I really need to work on finding that perfect composition and that light to make this an impressive shot. It's a great way to push yourself a little bit harder and go, okay, like I know I'm capturing and creating some good photos here, but how can I add another level of storytelling into my work? How can I add more atmosphere or mood to this shot? So it just adds that extra element and gets your creative juices flowing to think how you can change that up.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about your bucket list of locations.
Yeah.
So what's number one on your bucket list? And I don't want you to list everything because my list is very bloody long. And,
never growing, isn't it?
It just keeps growing. You just see something and go, oh, I've got to go there, you know.
It's really funny because sometimes things that are really high on my list will drop down and then things will chop and change. I've always wanted to go to Iceland. It's high up on my list, but there was a certain point in time a few years ago where everybody was going there, and I'm like, no, that's going to drop down.
And I've done the same. I was going to do the Silk Road, and we were literally finger above the mouse button to book it.
Yeah.
Just before COVID came along, and then COVID came along, and it was, but not go there.
So
we just haven't got round to putting it back onto the top of the list yet.
Yeah, I'd say one of the early childhood spots of always wanting to visit was Antarctica. So that's one of the highest on the list, just for the raw nature and the raw elements of it all. In terms of something that will align to one of my projects, the Stans are actually on the list. I was just talking to another photographer just last week and just going, hey, like maybe we should put some plans together to make this happen and work out where we're going to go and what we're going to do. So really grassroots concepting for that at the moment, but that's one of those more unique plans that we're working on, and we'll see when it pans out. Not too sure when that will be, but yeah, that's definitely high up on the list.
What's the most memorable place you've been, or most memorable photographic moment?
Ooh. Probably one that comes to mind when I was in Yosemite National Park.
Yeah.
And we just arrived, and I was spending my honeymoon with my wife, and we'd gone over there, and I'd turned our honeymoon into a photographic tour.
That'd be memorable.
Be very memorable. So I've got a very understanding wife, and she enjoys photography as well, but I'm just at a whole nother level to her. I was always just trying to add all these other elements into it. But when we got into Yosemite, it's one place I've always wanted to visit from many different books that I've read and looked at, and getting inspiration from Ansel Adams and a whole bunch of other photographers, and seeing work from, say, Ken Duncan and all those other artists. And then finally getting there, and you drive through Tunnel View, and you get out there and you see that amazing view.
Yeah.
And just the accessibility that America has as well. Like in Australia, if you want to go and see a remarkable location, you got to get out of the car, and then you got to hike 12 kilometers, and you've got to have everything prepared. And you've got that really untouched, beautiful, raw beauty of that spot. Whereas in America, they go, oh, okay, this spot is incredible. We're going to build a road to it. There's going to be a massive
and a car park for 150 cars, and
open your doors, and you just put your tripod at the front of your hood of your car, and there's the shot. That was mind blowing to be there and to see that how accessible things were. That it doesn't matter what you've got, you can just get out there and shoot and capture something amazing. So we were traveling there. It was day 2, sunset as we were leaving. We got to Tunnel View, and the sky just exploded with color. It's probably one of the most mesmerizing and insane sunsets I've ever experienced. And it just happened to be at the perfect spot in the perfect location. And it was it was really interesting because I got to the location. I was like, okay, what do I do? I've got this location in front of me. I've got everything falling into place. The waterfalls flowing. The clouds are throwing all this pink and orange hues through the sky. And I just panicked and froze because I'm like, this is just so awe-inspiring that I just want to take it in, but I need to capture every different angle. And
Yeah.
I
I
captured
wish
it
I
from
had 5 cameras.
yeah, that was part of the problem because I had too many things and I was like, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I
Yeah.
just went and took one quick shot and then I just sat there and I looked at it and I just this is amazing.
Mm.
And I took it in and I went, okay, now I'm going to get to work. And then I went and shot all these variety of shots and yeah, it was just incredible to see. I'll
Yeah.
share that photo with you so you can have a look at it. But yeah, that's probably one of the most memorable in terms of all of the things aligning and falling into place, and the most memorable sunset as well.
Yeah.
But there's been quite a few different unique experiences that have all happened and fallen into place.
Wow.
Snow monkeys is one of an all-time favorite experience as well. Going up and into Nagano in Japan and spending some time up in the mountain region and seeing the snow monkeys and watching them fight with each other and then jump into the hot springs and have the snow falling down on them. That's just a really, really unique experience. It's really cool and something that I do on my photo tours as well. When we go to Japan,
Yeah. Nice.
ends up being one of the locations that we go and visit, and having everyone else experience that and seeing their reaction and the photos they capture is a really cool thing for me to be a part of and to see everyone's
Yeah.
results for
Cool. What about horror stories? Have you had situations where everything's fallen apart?
that. As a professional photographer, you aren't just someone that presses the button, but if as a photographer, you are the troubleshooter. So
Yeah.
you're not just taking the photos, but if you've had something fallen apart or you've forgotten to take something, a lot of the time as the photographer, you have to go, okay, I need to MacGyver this. I've got some duct tape. I've got a stick. How can I make this work?
Yeah.
What can I do to make this work? Can I manufacture something that I've got with these 3 matchsticks and a piece of paper? Or do I have to go to the shop and buy something else to make it work?
Yeah.
There's been so many situations where that's happened. There's countless times where I've gone, okay, I haven't got this. How can I work around it? I've done a corporate event where I didn't have the backdrop stand, so I had to work with other lighting fixtures that I had to prop it up to make it work.
Yeah.
And it's just having that creative flair to be able to go not just creatively for the work that you're doing, but creatively thinking outside the box and going, okay, this is a situation that is not good for me right now,
Yeah.
but swallow the panic and just meticulously work at what are my options, what's around me, what can I use, and make it work. And that's what really sets apart the photographers from being experienced to people that are just doing it for the first time and going, I have to reschedule this because this has happened and I can't.
Yeah. I haven't got what I need. Yeah.
Yeah. And even early on, I remember when I was photographing, there was one particular shoot that it was just a personal shoot for a sunrise up in the Blue Mountains. It was a 2 hour drive to get to the location. I'd left it at, I think, 4 a.m. to get there and got to the spot, took the camera out, set everything up, and went to take my first test shot and had no SD card. And I remember going, great, no shops are open. I've got no cards anywhere. And that was a learning experience pretty early on. But it
Yeah.
was something that I made that mistake once and never again.
Yeah.
And they're learning experiences. It's not something that I regret because now I have a checklist that I put in, and before I leave, I've got to check that I've got batteries, they're fully charged. I've got my SD cards, I've got neck straps, I've got extra tripod adapters.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm going to have to look for. I've carried my tripod into that location. Now I've got to look for a rock to stand it on because the tripod's irrelevant because I don't have the quick release plate.
Yeah.
So
I've done that. I did it would have been about a 6K hike
Yeah,
into a waterfall,
me too.
wanting to shoot some not massive long exposures. I wanted a bit of that silky waterfall, and yeah, well, it wasn't happening.
Yeah, and it's all those situations where the more you get out there and shoot, the more problems you will encounter and the faster you'll
Absolutely.
learn. And then you start to put processes in place or checklists or whatever it is, you start to make sure that those things don't happen again.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's all part
Multiple
of
spare
the process.
batteries, multiple SD cards.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you'll have like an SD card in your wallet, an SD card in your glove
Yep.
box. You'll have one in the boot of your car just in case.
I have two sets of filters for just where you drop the filter and it shatters on the rock.
And that's what sets you apart
Yeah,
from someone that's just starting out to a seasoned
absolutely.
professional is that you've gone through all that heartache of breaking filters, dropping things off a cliff when you're like, oh, I just little silly things, and you just start to work out that okay, I need to either have that coffee before I leave
Yeah,
or work out that you have doubles of everything or you just pre-plan and you go through that checklist before you get in the car. It's just part and parcel of what we have to do.
yeah. Is there somewhere you've been that you'd like to retire to?
What was that question?
Is there somewhere that you've been that you'd like to retire to?
That's a hard question because living in Sydney, I find that life is really full on
Yep.
and the hustle and bustle of everything and the traffic. I'm finding that more and more I want to just move away from that and just find somewhere that is quieter and that is more focused on nature.
Yeah.
Um, the family element plays a big part on where that is and what happens.
Cool.
But there's been so many locations that are just like, this is really nice. I could see myself here.
Yeah.
I haven't found the exact location yet,
You
so
haven't
it
found the
might
one.
be on that bucket
You,
list.
you got plenty of time in your
Yeah,
career.
yeah. There's an element of Japan that's really enticing to me. I did student exchange there when I was 15, and
Right.
I've been running photo tours there for many years and visited the country quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's something very unique and different. Like you can go to most countries, but Japan is just a world of its own in terms of the people, the culture, just the interactions you have. I
Yeah.
find that there's a real mystery and beauty about that country. And
Yep.
so that's got a really soft spot in my heart. And I really enjoy speaking to people. If you start talking about Japan, you won't shut me up. I'll just be
Yeah.
asking questions and telling different experiences I've had. And that all plays into it as well. It's just what are those key elements that are going to make that perfect location to retire to.
Yeah.
Language barrier might be a bit of an issue there, not fluent.
Yeah, I think you pick it up reasonably well. It's
Yeah,
the reading Japanese is my biggest problem.
yeah, definitely.
But you've got Google now that your phone
Yeah,
translates.
yeah. Google Translate, just pull it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Ah, yeah, Japan would be up there. I love being there, and again, I'm trying to bite my tongue and not spend hours talking about Japan and how good it is. But there's some lovely little rural areas there that I don't think I could live in Tokyo.
No. Yeah,
There's a couple of places just outside Kyoto though that I think I could get very comfortable in.
yeah.
Kyoto is not, it's big and it's a bit of a bustle, but it's not Tokyo.
It's
It's
old world Japan.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
more that older school Japan, and there's some places just on the outskirts there that are really good. But if it was Australia, it's probably somewhere on the coast here on the east coast. But I'm not sure. There's just too many places where I go, yeah, but if I go up north, then I'm too far from the Sapphire Coast. And if I go down the Sapphire Coast, I'm too far from Burgess up at Foster and all that. So it's
yeah. Yeah,
Sydney,
and they're
for
both
that sort of
two
thing.
they're both two gorgeous locations. I
Yeah,
think the same if it was Australia, very similar. It'd be this the Sydney East Coast, a little bit further south, or a little bit further north away from Sydney. So
yeah.
far
Outside of
enough
Sydney.
away where it's quiet, but not where there's nothing around.
Yeah, Port Stephens definitely up there,
Yeah.
but I'd be stipulating being over at Hawk's Nest rather than down in Nelson Bay because that just gets absolutely ridiculous at summertime and
Summertime.
holidays. It's just
Yeah.
it's worse than Sydney.
It's fun in that happy medium.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. You just got to find the place that's quiet enough, but still has enough stuff for you to keep interested. I want to talk a little bit about how you go about processing, not in depth into all the technical stuff. I'm more interested in, are you straight home, straight into processing? I'm talking more about your personal work because
Yeah.
if you if you're working professionally, as you know, you've got your deadline, so you've got to be straight into it.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes I want it before you even leave the.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Can I have
Yeah,
it? Can I have it now? Yeah.
yeah. I find it really depends on the trip and where I've been and what I've done and what
Yeah.
I've got happening the following day or week.
Yeah.
If it's a big international trip that I've done, most of the time I've already been editing on the plane home. There's
Yeah.
that time
Right.
where I can actually get through, and then I'll quickly go through and pull out my favorites.
Yep.
I find that life gets too busy too quickly. And if I don't do that in that time slot, then it could be months down the track
Yeah.
before I really look at anything. There's been like trips, especially the trip to Africa, the tour that we hosted. I found that I haven't gone back to re-edit a lot of the work since then, purely
Right.
because life got too busy and I went straight into the next few things that I had on, and then life gets on, and you just go, oh, actually, that's been a couple of years. I should probably go back through and look at the other images. Yes, I edited maybe 100 to 200 images from that trip,
Yeah.
but I
Right.
took way more than that. So
Yep.
what am I actually going to do? What are those hero shots that maybe I've missed because I've just glazed over them quickly? So it depends. There's definitely a large list of images that reside on the hard drive that I haven't had a chance to get to. But
Yeah.
there's that initial launch when I come home. I'll go straight to downloading everything, backing it up, and then also editing those few shots that I think are the hero shots or the favorites that I maybe starred along the way. And then
Yeah.
I'll work on those and process them. In terms of the processing side, they'll go straight into Lightroom and do my basic edit through there. Most of my work is done through Lightroom,
Yep.
unless it's quite an intricate shot. It might go into Photoshop for some advanced adjusting, but
Yeah.
say 85% of the edit would be done in Lightroom, especially
Yeah.
with the advancements these days. Back in the day,
Well, the addition of masking's made a big difference, I
a
think.
huge difference in terms of how intelligent that masking is, and
Absolutely.
knowing different ways to tweak the masking as well.
Yep.
There's things that a lot of people don't really talk about where you can reverse masks and just
Yeah.
really isolate
Well,
certain.
add and subtract to masks, so you can actually do a combination of, say, a radial and a gradient, or a
Yeah,
radial
and then intersecting
brush.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been game changing in allowing us
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
do what we'd normally do in Photoshop and be able to do it all in the one program without having to use the bandwidth of your computer to max
Yeah.
out the GPU and the CPU to get the results. So yeah, the technology of everything nowadays has sped up that process to get the results done much faster, or
Yeah.
at least give you a visual aid to go, okay, that is what I want. And then you can take it to Photoshop and go and finesse it and get that little extra 10% better, which as a perfectionist, that might be everything that you need to do. And it might take you an extra hour to do it. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. What about creative blocks. Have you ever hit a creative wall or a situation where things just aren't working for you and you've just got to put the camera and everything else aside and go and do something else for a bit?
Yeah, a lot of the time, those creative blocks are just not having enough time to invest in the actual shooting. So it
Yeah,
hasn't been a part where I've gone, oh, I can't capture anything, because whenever I'm out and about, I'm always looking for, my eyes are always locked in at seeing light and seeing how that's playing. So a lot of the time I'll be out and about without my camera and I'll be like, I wish I had it. That would be a perfect shot. And it could just be someone walking through a beam of light in the street and everything else is really dark around it. And there's that highlight there. And it's like, oh, that would be a cool shot. It doesn't have to be something mesmerizing like an insane sunset with the perfect waves and bioluminescence and the astro and auroras all happening at once. They're like the hero things that you plan to go out for. But it's more about just, I'm always looking and seeing different shots, whether I've got my camera or not. It's just something I can't switch off in my brain as
yeah,
you get into it. So creative blocks, I guess we all go through it. It's just a part of life.
mm-hmm.
I find that the more I come up against those situations, the more I just need to get back to nature. And I might just need to go do a hike, or I need to go out there and just do a bit of a camping trip or something, just to recalibrate my senses and recalibrate. I think being stuck in that work mindset and going here and going there and working stuck in the studio and just been editing for 8 hours straight, and then you go into like outside and you go, okay, that's what the sun looks like, I need to get out and shoot. I
Yeah,
think just that's a big element for me, that not that I lose my or get a creative block or lose my creative flow, but it's just there'll be elements where I need to get out there just to kind of recalibrate, and that will get that momentum back into being creative.
yeah,
But then again, it can also just be having those conversations with people,
yeah,
and then just go, hey, let's go out and shoot together. And then you get that inspiration from the people you're surrounding yourself with, and constantly encouraging each other to try something new and explore something different.
yeah. Awesome. We talked a bit about everyone being a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as photography's role in society?
The most important thing photography does is capture memories.
Mm.
So if we're all out there photographing everything and anything, that's all well and good, but it's those key moments that you capture, whether it be a milestone or a family member.
Yep.
Those moments don't become that important to you until, say, that person's not with you anymore. Then that's important. Then you go, oh, I wish I had more of this, or I need, this image is so important to me now, because your kid's grown up and they're not that 2-year-old anymore. They're now they've moved out and now they're living their own life. And then you look back at that as a memory and you go, it just draws you back to that point in time in life. And that's what photography's always been about. It's
Yeah.
just, it's capturing a moment in time. And it doesn't have to be the most incredibly technically sound image. It could just
No,
be
no.
a snap that grandma's taken of you and someone else. It's
Yeah.
just, that's what imagery does. Like it transports you back to that moment in time. So that's the biggest, most important thing for photography, is
Mm-hmm.
not to lose sight of what its true origin is all about, is to just freeze that moment in time to then be able to share that with people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you see as the future of photography?
That's a tricky one. I find that like we talked about before, where photography is constantly switching roles, where people go, oh, it's popular, oh, it's not so cool anymore. I'd rather do this or do that. But it's always going to be there. It's never going to disappear. I think with the resurgence of film photography and compact cameras being cool again, and more people wanting to use that, their life and just humanity is just proven that medium is still there.
Yeah.
Just because it's easy to go take a photo doesn't mean the medium of sketching something isn't important and isn't going to be there in the future.
Yeah.
It's always going to be newer technologies and better ways and faster ways of doing things. But it gets to the point where life gets too busy and you don't want the hustle and bustle. So you go back to those basic ways of doing things, and that's the art form.
Nice.
So the resurgence of film, people are out there capturing more with film cameras now. That's proof right there to say that yes, a lot of things are moving to video now, and that's the big focus, and everyone needs to have videos for their business and videos of each and everything that's happening in the world. But still imagery has a very important part in everyone's life.
Definitely. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
As an industry, to be a photographer as a career path?
Oh, yeah, or just photography in general?
Sifting through the noise to find your own way of shooting.
Okay.
Because it's so accessible, people get caught up in mimicking everyone else and not being their true authentic self and capturing what really resonates with them. I think people feel like they have to be a certain type of photographer and have to follow everyone else's footsteps and follow the trends and the fashion of that time and place. But the more people are authentic and following their own true passions, I think that's where you're really going to find your voice and be able to share your own art form in photography. I think that's the most important thing.
What does life outside photography look like for you? What do you like to do when you're not doing photography?
I think photography is still there. Spending time with the family, a lot of the time it's just going for road trips, being out in nature, doing hikes, spending time with friends and family and just enjoying life. But it's hard to switch that photography vision off in your head, because
I know exactly what you mean. I can be driving or either as a passenger or as a driver, and you see something and the head just swivels and I wish I could pull up here and just get the camera out, but
it's just ingrained in my personality and my nature. We would be chatting alongside, going down a road and chatting in the car, and then all of a sudden, hang on, and then that person will still be talking. I'll just be like, oh man, that sky looks amazing. And if only I did this, and if I had this lens, I could do that. And it's just constantly ticking around in my head. So, although there's plenty of other things that I do when I'm not shooting, and there'll be times where I don't pick up the camera for a while, it doesn't ever stop that my mind going, oh, we could just do this or do that. So I don't know if I've answered your question there, but that's just
it's an answer. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
The best or worst piece of advice? There's always been situations where people will just say, oh yeah, that's great, that's enough. But in the back of your head, it's not. And sometimes if you just listen to that, you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's good enough, and I'll put it in. And then after you've hit submit, or you've sent it in, or you've put it out there to the world or printed it, you've gone, nah, it's not right. It needs more time. It's not ready yet. I need to do this or this. So sometimes you got to just listen to your gut instinct and go, hang on, it's not quite ready. It's hard because I struggle with being a perfectionist with things. So sometimes I need to just get out there and just submit and just put it out there. But there are situations where you go, hang on, I need to just rein this back because it's not quite ready. There's something about it that it's good, but it's just not, it's missing that element that I want it to have. But I wouldn't say it's the best or worst advice. So it's advice where you just need to listen to your inner self and go, you either agree or disagree, and sometimes you just need to disagree.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think when you're, particularly if you're submitting something for a client or a competition or something where there's something hanging on the outcome, if you're just doing a post to Instagram, who cares? As long as it's good enough, good enough for that. But yeah, there are things that you've actually got to go through. And if your head is saying it's not quite there yet, then it's not quite there. And you really need to sit back. You might not know exactly what it is, but you need to then sit back and go, okay, I might walk away from it for a little bit and come back with fresh eyes and then go, that's what it is. It's that color isn't quite right, or that color combination isn't quite right, or this bit of whatever it is distracting me. So they're the things that you've actually got to, I agree, you've got to listen to.
Yeah, and that's something we talked on when we were in Orange together. And it's something I always recommend to people is when you are editing and you're in the zone and you're working over and over for a couple of hours on an edit, just to leave it for the night and come back to it with fresh eyes in the morning and go, okay, that needs this adjustment, that needs this tweak. And that's a huge benefit to do, and something that I recommend doing for most of my shoots whenever it's a long-winded edit, that I'll always give myself a chance to look at it with fresh eyes and go, okay, that is ready for the client, and send it off.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's great advice. Just got a couple more questions for you, but one of them we talked a little bit about before the episode actually started. Is there anybody out there that you think I need to be talking to?
I think, I don't know if you've spoken to him yet, but Tony Hewitt.
I have spoken to Tony, yes.
You've spoken to Tony already?
Yep.
Yeah. He would be one of the...
chat with him.
What was that?
I really enjoyed our chat. It was awesome.
Yeah,
I learned a lot. I was saying this to somebody. Doing this has been like a 3-year university course in photography. It's for
sure. Just the people you would have spoken to and just the insights you gain from the episodes. Yeah, Tony Hewitt's been an incredible person to deal with over the years, and just to rub shoulders with him, but also to have some deep and meaningful conversations and chats about life as well as just about photography. And just his vision on how he sees things is really incredible. Another photographer, I would probably recommend Melissa Finlay.
She is on the list, but I definitely want to talk to her.
Yeah, she's incredible. A local Australian photographer that now lives in Oregon. Her and her husband Ryan are just incredible photographers, and just artists in their own right. Just the way they approach photography, and Melissa's work and how she portrays mood and atmosphere and everything about it. You look at her work and it is an art piece on its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
She'd be on the list to talk to for sure.
All right, brilliant. Thank you for that. My last question is probably the most important one for many of my listeners, and it's one that I've been trying to get to the bottom of since the beginning of the podcast. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It's not traditional, but I find that people like to be creative with different things and throw something out there and see what it does. It's not everyone's taste buds, but that's just like photography, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
It's
Not
art.
everyone
So
likes landscape photography, you know.
yeah.
Can't
So
think.
I think try new things. Maybe go out there and put some kiwi fruit or blueberries on a pizza.
Oh, okay. That's getting out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all for it. It's not my favorite go-to, but if it's on there, it's not going to deter me away at all.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much for taking some time with us, Scott. It's been really wonderful catching up with you again. Where can people find your work?
You can find me on Instagram at Scott Stramyk. I'm pretty much just my full name
Yep.
throughout most social channels, YouTube. I've also got my website, scottstramyk.com.
Awesome.
So yeah, you can find me on those channels.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Scott.
My pleasure. Good to chat.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. Pardon me. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. You can also find prints, photography gear, and also my 2025 calendar. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook and Photo. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.